what makes it even more exciting.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's to me, I don't mind any of it. And I'm ready for it, built for it. People don't realize just how much opposition we lived with growing up.
Right.
Folks have no idea. I'm like, what? You all think we just skated here? Oh Lord, not quite. Not quite. Quite an interesting journey here. But I'm going to give you Jonathan's number. You should tell him, about what you thought about him on at the installation.
Oh, yes. He was just wonderful and so heartfelt.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, and I think that's his real gift. That he comes from the heart.
30 seconds.
Mhm.
And my budget. Staples Connect makes it possible with the tools you need to work from anywhere. And now get
Okay.
up to
Thank you,
$200
Paul.
off select PCs. Like the
And if you
Lenovo
could
Idea Pad
give me
5i
a
with Intel
minute, that
i5
would help me a
processor.
little bit more because I'm still unclear. Is it 6:06? It kind of changes from day to day.
6:05:45, always the start time.
Okay, that's not what was given to me initially, just so that you know. I've been going at 6:06.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am free.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is a joy to be with you today. On Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021, we're going to be talking about these horrific images of the Haitian migrants being whipped with horse whips. What do you think about that? That's at 7 o'clock. It evokes images of being of slaves in the fields. And I think we need to talk about that. We need to talk about how we have different standards or different, we are welcoming still to people who are lighter, who are whiter, and we treat those who are darker, who are blacker, who are browner, horribly as immigrants. And it's an awful thing, and I think that we need to break that down today and talk about it. And we're going to have some COVID Q&A. There are a lot of questions that people still have about boosters. There are a lot of questions that people have about protocols. How do you enter someone's home? Right? Even if you've been vaccinated, do you mask or unmask? Also, we want to know as we send our children into schools, in particular, as we go into schools ourselves, from children to the teachers to the people who work in food services, the janitors. What are some things that you can do? What are some things that you can eat to help boost your immune system? Yeah, there's some things. Dr. Deb talks about the Swiss cheese model, that approach to health. She said, your vaccines, they're important, but they are one layer of many that can protect you against not only COVID-19, but against other illnesses that are still surging out here. So we're going to be talking about that today on the Santita Jackson Show. I'm coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars over here on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Andre was up first today, Dave Dowling to the north, Linear Bob out on the left coast. Bless your heart, you're always out there. You said now YouTube thinks the show begins at 4:30. Missing almost half an hour. Oh, Linear Bob, I don't like that. So we'll try and figure out how that's going to work. Maybe we just need to come on a little earlier. Jewel and Daryl and Michael Ann, my dear sister, and Louie Chewy and Vita. Love you, girl. Hey, how are you? It's so good to see you and Keith and everybody. Evangelist Travis, it's good to be with you today. Please like and share, everybody. Like and share, like and share, like and share, and call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Want to hear your voices today, but if you want to text me, you can thank GWC Injury Lawyers for that opportunity, and you can text at this number 773-763-9278 or call me at that same number. Everybody, let's get to some of these headlines before we hear some good news from Reverend Vicki Johnson. And it's Wednesday, everybody, as I shared with you before, September 22nd, 2021. Chicago will have a high of 63 degrees. 63 degrees. It showers, everybody. I think fall is here. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 70 degrees and sunny. The Dow closed down 50 points. The Nasdaq closed up 32 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 3 points. In Major League Baseball, well, we kind of had a Santita Jackson thing last night. That's right. The Twins faced off against the Chicago Cubs, and the Twins were triumphant 9-5. And the White Sox will be playing the Detroit Tigers today, everybody. What about medical experts, according to CNN, warning of another deadly pandemic winter as COVID-19 numbers tick up and flu season threatens? The U.S. is back at a point where more than 2,000 people are dying of COVID-19 every single day on average, according to Johns Hopkins University. Additionally, about 12,000 to 50,000 Americans lose their lives to the flu every year. We're going to be talking about what we can do to boost our immune systems, everybody. What can we do to be as safe as possible? Well, the UN has opened, everybody. The climate crisis was front and center at the UN General Assembly yesterday. The Chinese President Xi Jinping recorded a rare address to the UN body promising to halt coal projects. The Turkish president said his country will present the Paris Climate Agreement to its parliament next month. And our president, Joe Biden, and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson stressed further climate action during an Oval Office meeting. An array of international points of conflict were also addressed. And so we will be keeping up with what is happening at the UN. Progressive Democrats have announced that they will not vote for the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill without passing the $3.5 trillion package that is aimed at enacting President Biden's economic agenda. That vote is scheduled for next week. And as it stands, House Speaker Pelosi can afford to lose only a handful of votes to get anything passed. President Biden will increase into his engagement with congressional Democrats today, including a meeting with Speaker Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to try and get all the Democratic factions in line. Will they be able to do it? Will they be able to do it? Well, we're going to see. There are still about 8,600 Haitian immigrants remaining under the Del Rio International Bridge in Texas, waiting to be processed by immigration officials and possibly removed from the country. Of course, we're going to be following that story today on the Santita Jackson Show. In addition, there's a new law that bans abortion inducing drugs in Texas, everybody, after 7 weeks of pregnancy. And coroners have confirmed that it was the body of Gabby Petito who was found, and that she died by homicide. We're going to have to explore that story before we get out of here during the week, because it's very interesting. All of the resources that have been put into finding this child, and of course they should have been, but no one's examining the family. She lived with her fiance's family, and her fiance, when the son returned home without his fiance, they didn't say anything. Or certainly they didn't say anything publicly. They didn't report the girl missing for days. There's a lot that's just not quite right about that. And so we need to talk about that. And then we've got a young black man who is missing. He and his mother is pleading for some help. We're going to be talking about that as well. Hey, we have got some good news that we need to get today from Reverend Vicki Johnson. Pastor Vicki Johnson, I'm so glad that you are with us today, because I understand that one of our morning stars showed up at your church on Sunday. What wonderful news.
Yes, that is great news. Good morning, Santita. Yes, one of your stars showed up. Star Sandra showed up, even though she was behind the time, had gotten confused with the time, but she was there. And it was because of the good news on the Santita Jackson Show.
Well, it's just the good news that we're all trying to share. We're all on the same page. And I'm so glad that she was able to be at your service, and I'm glad that she is going to return, because that is a
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing. That's a blessing. Of course, your church is at 80th and Jeffrey. I don't want anyone to be confused. It's the St. Thomas Lutheran Church. And the service begins at 11:45, everybody. 11:45 at 80th and Jeffrey. Now, it's getting cooler. Before you give us the good news, Are you moving indoors? Because, now it's the high in Chicago today will be about 63 degrees.
And Sunday is going to be one of the best days of the week. It's going to be around 74 and no rain. And so we're praying that this continues for a few more weeks. But we are meeting so that we will be able to go inside in the fall. And we have enough space so that we can be distanced and the service would remain a short period of time inside together. So we're making plans.
Okay. Well, just keep us abreast and keep us apprised, everybody. That's 80th and Jeffrey, right here on the south side of Chicago at 11:45. It's like 30 minutes of power, everybody. 11:45 to 12:15 with Pastor Vicki Johnson at the St. Thomas Lutheran Church. What's the good news today, Pastor?
Well, good morning to all your stars and friends. There is good news. One Sunday, I found myself at home, which is a rarity. I believe that it was after the birth of one of my children. And instead of hearing a sermon at church, I received a message that has stuck with me for over 30 years. I was watching a story covering the great quarterback, Joe Montana. He had sustained an injury from which he was recovering. And a part of his rehabilitation was to prepare him for the life in the game that he loved, football. They trained him on how to fall. They knew that there is no way to play football without falling. Whether you're on offense or defense, you are going to fall. You cannot make it through without falling by tripping or being tackled. Falling is part of the game of football. But falling is also part of the game of life. Prior to viewing this special, I had always seen falling as an accident, something you had no control over, something that just happened and you had to deal with. But in this game of life, you will fall. I hope not physically, but in some way you will fall. A fall in consciousness, in your thinking, a fall from grace, a fall in status, a fall nonetheless. Since we are all subject to fall, the key to success in this game of life is learning how to fall so that you will be able to get back up again. Sickness can lead to a fall. Death can lead to a fall. Rejection can lead to a fall. And instead of thinking that something is wrong with you when you fall, know that it's natural. But if you can rehab your mind, keep your mind on recovery and not the fall, then you will rise again. Philippians 4:8 ends with, think on these things. Today, I suggest that when falling, think on recovery and not the fall. If you can do this so that you can get back up again and get into the game of life, I think that is good news.
Thank you for that. I needed that today. Because in life, my dad said to me when I went away to college, he said, Daddy's only going to ask you to do one thing. I said, what is that? It wasn't to go to class. It wasn't to do that. He didn't ask me any of that. He didn't request any of that. He said, I want you to find a church because the storms of life, they hit without warning. And if your
Yeah.
soul's not anchored in God, you're gonna drift away. And it's the recovery. He said that's one of the things that I learned and he moved over in football. Babe, you're not always gonna have the touchdown. You're not always gonna win. And sometimes you're gonna fall. He said, but the ground is no place for a champion. You gotta be able to get up. He said that's the true measure of you. He said, because you're gonna fall. That's gonna happen. And I want to thank you for that because that is somebody needs that today. I know I did. I hope that you did too. Please meet this pastor at her church at 80th and Jeffrey. It's 30 minutes that will keep you filled throughout the week. 11:45 to 12:15. 11:45 to 12:15 at 80th and Jeffrey. That's right. I'm saying it because I don't want anyone. I don't want anyone to miss any bit of it. Well, it can happen. It can happen. It can happen. And bless your heart, Sandra. I'm so glad that you were there, and I hope that you will join Pastor Vicki Johnson because she is really a gift. She is really a gift, and maybe she'll sing for you one Sunday. Oh.
Thank you, Santita.
Absolutely. I'm going to come through there and sing with you one Sunday. How about that?
Well, amen.
We'll be spaced apart. We'll be spaced apart. In this pandemic, we will do that. Sending you much, much, much love. Pastor Vicki Johnson, everybody. St. Thomas Lutheran Church at 80th and Jeffrey, 11:45 to 12:15 every Sunday. Meet them over there. She is practicing the safety protocols that will keep you safe. And she's giving you the food that will keep you filled spiritually. Thank you so much, Pastor Johnson. We'll stay right here. We're talking with Dr. Deborah Furholden. We're going to be joined by Dr. Shanina Knighton at the bottom of the hour as we talk about how we can boost our immune systems. But we're getting a lot of news, Dr. Deb, a lot of news about vaccines. And you and I are about to embark upon a program in which we're going to be talking about the vaccines that adults need to get, which, quite frankly, flew way over my head. I didn't realize that there was an actual protocol. But I want to ask you about this. What about these? What about the vaccine boosters? Dr. Wen, who is a prominent physician on CNN, she wrote an opinion piece in which she said, basically, for those who've been vaccinated, for those who are getting boosted, that really you should follow your own mind on whether you get boosted or not. What do you think about that?
Dr. Lena Wen told people to follow their own mind.
Washington Post piece. Yep. Okay, I'm just asking.
That's just really disheartening.
Well, let me give this to you. This is the opinion piece. The CDC should let Americans decide for themselves if their risk warrants getting a booster shot. That's from the Washington Post yesterday.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly disagree with that, and here's why.
Okay.
And I have some history with Dr. Wen. Dr. Wen was the health commissioner for the city of Baltimore when I was at the city of Baltimore.
Oh.
And her predecessor was an amazing woman by the name of Osiris Barbeau, who moved on to become the health commissioner for the city of New York. And I served on Dr. Barbeau's cabinet.
Okay.
So I'm very familiar with Dr. Wen and some of her approaches. And some of her work. Her stint in Baltimore was pretty short, and then she went on to Planned Parenthood, and the stint there was even shorter. So I'm glad that she's found a place and that they've handed her a microphone, but I don't think that this is a sound message. And here's why. Because to say let people decide for themselves and let them, figure it out based on what they understand to be the risk. In order to really do that, you've got to understand the risk, and you've got to understand the benefit. But the data and the information needed for people to be able to do that, most people either don't have access to, or if you could access it, it's not digestible. It might as well be in another language. So the thought that what they're giving us and what's been provided is sufficient for people to be able to make these well-informed decisions, I think is a myth. And I think it's uninformed. It feels very much like let them eat cake.
Well,
so while I appreciate we all have a difference of opinion, I wholeheartedly disagree with what Dr. Wen is saying. And I feel like that point of view is just very far removed from the real lived experience of your average American who's having a very hard time wading through it all.
Well, because it flies in the face of, and I have respect for her, but it flies in the face of other things that she said, because she's come very, very close to saying that she said that we need vaccine mandates, okay, which of course is controversial. And she's been very, very firm about everybody taking them. This is what you need to do, and very, very, strict guidelines. But then this is how this opinion piece from the Washington Post yesterday concludes. When vaccines first became available, federal health officials made the eligibility criteria so strict that they became a bureaucratic nightmare and substantially hindered the rollout. They shouldn't make this mistake again. The FDA has already determined that a third Pfizer shot is safe and effective for many Americans, although that's up for debate. The CDC should endorse its recommendations and allow boosters for anyone who perceives themselves at higher risk. Part of the problem that we have here, Dr. Deb, epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. Indeed, you got your PhD from Johns Hopkins, which is where this information, that's ground zero for monitoring this pandemic in the United States and in many respects the world. I don't understand how, if this is so uneven, Dr. Deb, it just doesn't, how can I become my own physician? I mean, this is something that you have been saying that, kind of tongue in cheek, this is what we've become. And essentially that's what she's telling us to do. You decide whether you need a booster shot, even though we're seeing information about the declining effectiveness of Pfizer. But we see that with the second shot with J&J, it's almost like a super protector. I mean, with the second shot, it really boosts you through the sky. We're just getting a lot of information that's very, very confusing. What would you recommend in these last 2 minutes before we go to break? What should we do about the boosters? Because this is the Washington Post. Big opinion, front page.
I encourage people to not get medical advice from the newspaper. To get medical advice from your doctor. And if you want to know if a medication is safe and effective for you to use, the regulatory authority who has that control is the FDA. So for Dr. Wynn to characterize what the FDA has said and make this recommendation is, to me, an overreach. The FDA will tell us when it is deemed safe, effective, and necessary for different categories of people to get a booster. And to equate the prioritization of older adults and people living in congregate care facilities and things like that to air quote withholding boosters from people. Now, I think it's just such a warped myopic. I'm trying to even understand what the agenda is here.
1 minute.
Agenda-driven statement. People don't have what they need to understand that. To ask people, you figure it out for yourself. So what happens when 3 months down the line, we find out that for, people who didn't have waning immunity, for otherwise healthy people, some, less than trivial proportion of them have some unintended negative consequence from this third booster or from getting it prematurely.
Well, they say
the people themselves are responsible for that negative outcome because they chose to get it.
Yeah. I believe that's what they would do, because please, you can't sue anybody if anything goes wrong in the first place. I mean, just
exactly. You did that yourself. You did that yourself. You get to set up the
15.
I don't know.
And again, I think through the lens of
stay right there. Stay right there. I got to go a hard break, but I hear you. That's why I brought that to you. I said I knew no pressure can't be up because we need you. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. I don't want your pressure up. But when I saw that, because she said a lot of things that make me kind of
things happening, and I tell people you need to be up in arms about this. There are some things we should be up in arms about, and not just sort of say, "Oh, that doesn't make sense, so that's no good." That's just.
I said, let me just ask. I just thought I'd ask the question because I mean,
I'm not even kidding you. This is what our nation's leaders are doing right now. They're They've done it the whole pandemic, Santita. They have put the responsibility on people.
Of course.
So first it was on people to keep yourself safe. Shelter in place. Who the heck can just afford to just stay home for 18 months? Who can afford to do that? It took so long to even get relief in place. And then the big solution was you got to wear a mask. That was all they were telling us, wear a mask. They weren't dealing with physical environments. They weren't upgrading air handling systems. The OSHA officers weren't coming in and putting in, recommendations for occupational environment improvements and improvements in the physical environments of schools. They just put it all on people. Then here comes the vaccine. And they're like, this will get us out of it. All y'all got to do is everybody get the jab. Everybody get the shot. So they keep putting it on us. And now to say, look, the boosters, we think are good. The FDA, they're dragging their heels. So you use your own good judgment and let your heart be your guide on whether or not you should get a booster. That is just so irresponsible.
To me.
It's so irresponsible, and it just shifts the burden back over to individuals. How many people, we don't have to name names or numbers, but just in your mind's eye, how many people do you know who've gotten vaccinated and had problems? So they're still questioning the safety and effectiveness of the first or the second dose. And now you want them to weigh it all out and figure out if they think they should get a third dose when they're wrong?
I mean, you know your risk. But guess what? I didn't know my risk when I was trying to weigh whether I was going to take the shot or not. I didn't know my risk when I wanted to find out, okay, how does Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, they've all changed their names, by the way. I mean, how am I supposed to know what works and what's going to work best for me? No one has said anything like that. Anything. I had to ask you.
Frequent gas and stomach pain for years.
I was bloated all the time.
Okay. Huh?
I don't know.
Well,
It's
that's
so crazy
why.
to me who has the mic. It's just so ridiculous to me who has the mic.
Well, I see that's
It's
what.
so ridiculous.
No,
to me.
it's.
When you look and you talk to the people who know them and who work with them and who understand who they are and what they're about, it makes sense to us. But it's really more that it's sad to me.
Well, honey, look, I know the people who predict, the political pundits. Honey, come on. All you have to do is look at the political pundits. They never get anything right, and they get paid a lot of money to tell us everything that is absolutely wrong. So come on. And these people, it's an agenda, and that's why I am kind of tired of this. Do not give me that. I want to know. I need to know something else. Because what they're not doing is helpful. Is Shanina there?
No, she's not.
Okay, please bring her up.
Okay, I can't get a hold of her.
Okay, just keep trying. Thanks. Okay. We can carry that on the other side because I think that's a real issue. That's a real issue.
I think it's an unfair burden to shift over to the American people. You decide.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you worry about the FDA and all these other things. We told you earlier in the pandemic that you could trust.
Too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We got into quite the discussion on the other side with Dr. Deborah Holden on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page right here on Facebook. And please go to my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. Like and subscribe. Dave Dowling, let me know if you all are up there. And I think you are. And Linear Bob, you're up there now? Okay, I just want to make sure. Everybody, call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Want to know what your thoughts are today. And please keep trying Dr. Knight and Paul, because I do want to get her on. But there's I'm sorry? Okay,
I
because
got her. She's here.
there's a lot. We have her on now, but I wanted Dr. Verholden to finish this thought because I think this is very important because this was an above the fold headline in the Washington Post before we start talking about what we can do to boost our immune systems, because we are working with Dr. Deborah Verholden in a program to really make us healthier, everybody. I asked her, I wasn't trying to blindside you, but I know these are all your peers. These are people you have been working with.
Hello.
And Dr. Deborah Verholden, yep, but Dr. Verholden, I wanted you to finish your point.
I don't know what happened. I don't.
No, we're on the air,
I don't
Doctor.
hear her.
Everybody, we're on
I'm
the air.
not sure if we're on the radio.
We're on the radio.
Or not, but they were trying to get you pulled up, and now she's gone.
Can she hear me, Paul?
Yeah, that's what I just.
Okay, can they hear me?
Well,
Dr. Verholden?
On the radio, which I don't.
I don't think they can hear me, Doctor. Paul, I don't think they can hear me.
We can hear you now.
Okay, very good. You couldn't hear me before. Couldn't hear you before. You all were having a lot of crosstalk on the air, but that's all right. I'm glad you're there. I wanted you to finish your thought before we get into really boosting our immune systems with Dr. Shanina Knighton, because I wanted you to finish this point, because a lot of people who are speaking to us on the news, we're getting our medical advice from them. And then I was speaking to one of our listeners who has been exposed to COVID while she's fully vaccinated. You know, she's been told, basically she doesn't have to quarantine. I'm like, whoa, are you serious? That doesn't work for me. Well, the CDC, I'm like, look, you need to call Dr. Deb and Dr. Shanina Knighton in the morning today. Call, because this is very, very uneven. And now we're hearing from one of the most, certainly one of the most respected and one of the most high profile doctors in the nation, that the CDC should let Americans decide for themselves if their risk warrants getting a booster shot, which to me is just, I'm like, okay. I mean, and these are companies that assume no risk if there's some kind of vaccine injury, and it can happen there's risk when you take aspirin, everybody. Okay, there's risk assigned to just living, breathing. There's risk. There are pollutants in the air. Okay, so let's just get on over that. And not get over it, acknowledge it. But to go from no one is responsible for anything that happens to you. And now I'm the one who's supposed to decide whether I get a booster shot, according to her. You need to assess your risks. I'm like, what are you talking about? When I told you I was at risk for this, that, blood clots, heart disease, and the initial studies of these different vaccines show that this can happen, or certainly it's happening in a growing population. I can't get any answers, Dr. Deb. What should we do before we move on, before we move forward? What should we do about boosters? Do we decide for ourselves?
Follow the FDA recommendations for now. I have been saying this. I do not advise people to go out and make these decisions. And I told you we've sort of been tracking this a little bit. It's hard to track because people are in fear, and so they're operating out of that fear. And people are going and they're just saying, hey, I'm here to get my COVID vaccine. I'll take Pfizer. When in fact, they've already had 2 doses of Pfizer. So they're just getting their own booster. And the people who are administering the shots don't even know that they are now participating in somebody doing something that we hope won't harm them, but we don't know. And I have not been presented with anything that says this for our general population is going to be some great thing. I just think it really is infuriating to me, because I really believe that when you raise your hand for a job, when you get elected for a job, because you raised your hand and asked people, pick me, right? Pick me. When you accept these appointed positions, it comes with a lot of responsibility. And instead, during this pandemic, of these people taking responsibility, instead of the government taking responsibility, our elected leaders and our appointed officials, our health officers, our CDC directors, our NIH directors, they keep placing the responsibility and the burden on the backs of American people. And we are not armed with all that we need. We've been lied to about this pandemic from the outset. The former administration withheld from us that there was even a crisis looming for months. The White House knew for months what was happening before we knew. And so now, to have somebody that says, hey, you use your own best judgment.
that just flies in the face of everything else. We said follow the science. Follow the science, and the science isn't even there yet. And here's the other thing, just my logic. My logic would tell me, okay, if they were really pushing this booster on everybody, I might have more apprehension because there's real money to be made. You know, earlier in the pandemic, the pharmaceutical companies tried to act like it. I heard a couple of other people say, oh, no, this ain't where the big money is. The big money is in hypertension medication, diabetes medication, and stuff that people are going to have to be taking every day. But I'm like, yeah, you're talking about a small percentage of the population taking something every day versus something that we're now saying everybody in the population is going to need and is going to need 2, 3, however many doses of it. And these pharmaceutical companies are getting paid per dose. They're getting paid per dose.
Well, they have already been paid. They have already been paid. So no, somebody make on top of this. You know, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and so we need people we can trust. When they talk about vaccine hesitancy, I said, you're that's not right. You all have not. You're telling a lot of different stories, and I can't get it straight. I can't get it straight, and that's why
makes it out. The conversation of hesitancy makes it again your problem. You, the individual sitting on the fence who won't just get in line and fall in line and go get your boosters or go get your vaccine, you're the problem. You know, that was the whole issue with labeling this the pandemic of the unvaccinated. You know, again, that was about blame and shame and guilt. It had nothing to do with leadership. It had nothing to do with science. It had nothing to do with good public health. And it didn't work anyway. So I just hope that people don't take what Dr. Wen said with a grain of salt.
Okay.
You know, and I've been encouraging people this whole pandemic. This is the opportunity now and more than ever. Elevate your consciousness around your own health and well-being. Take the reins of your own health. And I've been saying this, and I'm going to keep saying it. You need a primary health care provider on your health team. That person is not the end-all, be-all. They are not the captain. You are the captain of your health team. But you need that expertise, and you need somebody that you can develop relationship with, that you can develop trust with, that you can get to know, and they can get to know you to help you navigate and manage the ship called your health. So to tell people you figure it out on your own, it also flies in the face of that. So were you supposed to walk into your physician's office with your mind already made up? You know, I could understand. Have a conversation with your physician so that you can understand, or your primary health care provider, you know, so that you can understand the risks and the benefits and where you might fall in, you know, by way of need for a booster. But to just tell people, trust yourself, go with your gut, I just think that is it's just more of the
Wait a
thing that
minute.
I think it's awfully irresponsible.
Hold on. When you've been telling me, don't trust myself, trust the science. Well, I mean, look,
Right?
girl, get out of here. No. That doesn't work. I mean, and the thing is, now J&J appears to be a lot more effective than we thought initially. Maybe their effectiveness and efficacy was not as high as Pfizer and Moderna, but with the boost, I mean, there's at least initially, according to their studies, they're seeing phenomenal results. So, you know, I just think we just need to continue to get the information, find out what's going on, and please keep the FDA above reproach. Keep them above reproach so they can make the right decisions for all of us. Because, I mean, that for me that's the key. And we need to continue to ask questions, everybody. We need to continue to ask questions. And please get a primary care physician. Get a primary care physician very quickly before we go to Dr. Knighton. If you do not have private insurance that can provide for that, if you have to go to the county system, to a public system, can you still get a primary care physician, Dr. Deb?
You can get a primary care physician, and I've been saying a primary health care provider, because sometimes in some of the clinics you'll find a nurse practitioner, and these are very high quality, skilled, capable health care providers. If we're talking about somebody to be on post with you and make sure that you are up to date with your adult immunization. I just had a full metabolic workup. I was so proud. Kidneys, liver, all that working well. My LDL, slightly right at the line of normal, but just on the wrong side of it. The other measures, cholesterol, other things, great. I felt so, just to know that information. I was so empowered by it. And then I got some recommendations. Okay, you need to lose about 10, 15 pounds. You know, my red blood cell count was a little bit low. We need to get you on iron. You're 47. Are you taking vitamin D? And you live in Michigan. You spend a lot less time outdoors in the winter. Can I tell you, Santita, for me to be doing this work, I've also taken the reins of my own health.
Okay.
See, I'm not just out here preaching or trying to get my name in the paper or telling people my personal opinions. I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with people. I'm respecting where people are and their points of views and their opinions and their skepticism and all of that. It's all valid to me because it's how people feel. But the things that I'm asking people to do, I'm doing myself. I am doing that myself. So if you don't have private insurance, and it's unfortunate in our country that insurance is primarily linked to employment, look up your local health plan. Most cities and counties have a local health plan, and it is their job to make sure that everybody has health insurance and health coverage and access to care providers. So you can just literally, I live in Genesee County in Michigan. Ours is called the Genesee Health Plan. And affordable care, I keep reminding people, has actually become a lot more affordable. During this, pandemic, the criteria for who qualifies and the premiums that you pay have shifted dramatically. They have shifted dramatically. I used to throw numbers out, but I can't throw those numbers out because there's complexities. It depends on your family size and a whole lot of other factors. But reach out to your local health plan. You have nothing to lose in spending 30 minutes with somebody whose only job it is to make sure everybody in your county has health insurance and access to a healthcare provider. You can also go to your local federally qualified health center, FQHC, and they will provide primary and preventive care for people independent of insurance status. That is their charge, is to serve the medically underserved areas in our nation and individuals who are medically underserved.
Since we have a registered nurse here.
Or your FQHC.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
But since we have a registered nurse here, let me ask you, Dr. Shanina Knight, because, of course, we were going to talk about something else, but we kind of go with it here. What can, many of us would think that we need to go to a physician. Dr. Deborah Verholden has just let us know, no, you need a provider, someone who really understands the body. What would a registered nurse give us? I personally like nurses because they know the body and they're generally the first line responders in your life anyway.
So I would also let people know that there aren't just MDs. There are nurse practitioners. And nurse practitioners, they typically have advanced degrees in nursing, and they specialize either in primary care, they specialize in specialty care, whether that's cardiac, even midwife. If someone is considering having a baby, there's OBGYN, we're talking about gynecologists. And so, it's not that there is a bias, but there is a preference, for some people that prefer to go to a nurse practitioner because there is this mixture of having both a level of expertise of the MD, but also having that perspective as well as, of a nurse. And so that is a different primary care provider that you can go to that is not necessarily the traditional physician. The reason that that's helpful is because there is, shortages at times of physicians, but there are alternatives that you have to reach out to. The other piece of it is there's holistic medicine. I know that everyone does not do the traditional medical system. And so there are practitioners that also don't do the traditional medical system that individuals can look into. Because I'll tell someone, yes, even though you may practice holistic medicine, maybe you are into herbs and things like that, it is still important to have someone, there as an advisor because you may not necessarily have all of the answers. And I'm not going to go into detail about this, but I find it mighty interesting that a lot of employers, and I know that we brought this up with a while ago with CK in regards to the fact that if people are getting fired from their jobs because they don't have vaccines, that also means that they don't have medical insurance to resume their care anyway. And I think that that's a problem that no one's really talking about. And so essentially the stressors, you know, the lack of medications, the lack of care that is being, I would say, aggravated by the fact that individuals no longer have jobs because they chose to not be vaccinated, in my opinion, is doing way more harm than good for someone that is just not choosing to be vaccinated. And that's a problem that not many people are talking about right now. And it's like, where's the accountability at when it comes to the employer of do no harm?
Well, I mean, you're having hospital systems that are now letting nurses go. And I'm like, whoa, wait, there's a hospital in upstate New York. It was reported last week that will not be able to deliver babies because they don't have the staff, which is like, and then, then I read this. I don't want Dr. Verholden's blood pressure. I want it to come down, but it made my blood boil. When I said, wait a minute, now I've gone from, so all of this is on me, but but you're mandating medicines. I'm just like, wait a minute, who do I talk to? Who do I turn to? I mean, this is not the way this is supposed to be, and we've got to do better than this, because we're in a pandemic, Dr. Deb. We're still here. We're still here. And I'd like for someone to talk to us about what's happening in Israel and what's happening in Sweden. Remember Sweden? They were trying to build herd immunity, and they had a really tough time getting into it. But now it seems that it's beginning to work out for them. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what's happening in Israel. And interestingly enough, Israel only uses the Pfizer vaccine. Okay, so they're like a perfect population to find out what's happening with Pfizer, but not Moderna. What about the J&J? That kind of got pushed off to the side, but their new studies about their booster shot, the second shot, because they're a one-shot deal, they have almost like 100% effectiveness as a barrier against COVID-19. It's just a lot of information. And it would be nice, Dr. Verholden, if we could just separate it out and get it straight. I mean, because now I know some people who are saying, yeah, I got one shot from a two-shot dose, and I'm going to wait till next year. I heard that yesterday.
But the thing is, the science is changing. And I have to remind people, too, that when we look at this timeline, like February of 2020 was when the first case of COVID died in the United States, in Washington. And it wasn't until March of 2020 that there was even starting to be a development of a vaccine. It wasn't until December of 2020, after people were signing up from trials from March to December of 2020, that it was made available to the public. We are not even a whole year in yet to be able to have, I would say, a landscape of where we have stable science. Like, everything is constantly changing. And I think the problem is we are in such a time where people do want information black and white. They want it left and right. They want it, up or down. And that is not this landscape. And so the thing is we do have to take all of the information into account that we know and make the best decisions. The problem is that I think that so many and I'm saying leadership entities are literally, they are treating the wound and there isn't even a gunshot. It's like they're literally trying to get ahead of things, and unfortunately that is starting to backfire because we're starting to realize that more harm is being done in other places. For example, as I mentioned, how many people now are without their hypertension medication, diabetes medication, not getting proper obesity treatment or recommendations because they have now been kicked off of their insurance because of not being employed. And so does that do more harm at this point than not having a vaccine? And unfortunately, we're going to be behind in being able to determine the effects of that. But that is where I say we're moving way too fast and being way too inconsiderate when it comes to the other health problems that are now starting to aggravate the effects of COVID. or that are, aggravated by the effects of COVID.
Dr. Deb, do you think it's now time for us, since this is your basket policy, for us to talk about and really move toward Medicare for all?
It's unfathomable to me that we are one of the wealthiest nations on the planet, and people still experience health and healthcare as a privilege and not a right. It's inhumane. I think it was Martin Luther King that said, all the sort of inequities that we face, inequity in health and healthcare is like the worst. Because health, it just seems like a right. Like you should have the right to be healthy and happy and to prosper. But unfortunately we just know, and we've seen it time and time again. I love it how Pastor Fisher says it. COVID just told on our nation.
She said it's a snitch.
On our world. It's a snitch. COVID is the snitch. COVID was not the problem. I keep reminding people, COVID didn't cause this. COVID just shined a light on it. COVID flipped the switch on. So now it was sort of inescapable, and I think that's a good metaphor for what happened, during this pandemic. The sad part, like I said earlier, is, people have been consuming a whole lot more media. All that shelter in place, we was all sitting at home. You know how many people watched more TV during that, first 6 months of the pandemic than they had their whole life? Because you're home all day, and the TV and or the radio and or your, social media and whatever is just going constantly. It happened to me. I wasn't even aware of it. I just had some major news show playing in the background all the time. It just became the background noise. I got inundated with all of this information. And I'm telling you, and I have way more tools and skills than your average person to sort of try to filter and make sense of it, only because of my background and training and what I've spent the last 22 postdoctoral years of my career doing. And even for me, it was like information overload. I think it might have been Dr. Knighton who said, for your own mental hygiene, tune out, unplug. I think this was a part of one of your messages, like for your own well-being, like turn it off.
Stop it. Oh, you know what, ladies? I really have before we
Give it
go.
to my colleague.
Well, you know what? Well, look, she's giving you back your time. Let me say this. I'm really excited that we're all working together and that we are going to be talking about health, everybody, going forward, expanding beyond COVID-19, but also looking at vaccines that you need as an adult. Many of us don't think that we need vaccines as adults, but yeah, you do. And there are things that we need to be doing. They're talking to our Detroit public school children who cannot get vaccinated as of yet. They're not eligible. Parents are being advised, this is what you need to do to increase the healthfulness of your children, to boost their immune systems. First, something that Dr. Deborah Verholden has wrapped my knuckles about, sleep hygiene, getting enough sleep. So these are a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about going forward. If you have any questions or concerns, put them in the chat, everybody. Put them in the chat because Dr. Deborah Verholden is leading this charge and we are following her because we want to know what we can do to be as healthy as we can be. We're following her Swiss cheese model. We're going to get as many layers of healthfulness as we can get. And I'm so honored to be working under you, Dr. Deborah Verholden, taking our charge from you, working with you, Dr. Shanita Knight, and really under you, because look, I'm the talk show host. You all are the doctors here. I'm just following you. I just have questions. I want to talk about the Haitians who've been whipped at the border, horsewhipped. What do you think about that, everybody? How did that make you feel? Call me at 773-763-9278. Back in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. Ladies, I love you. I'm going to let you go. But you know what, Shanina, I got Deborah Verholden was about to jump through the wires into the sky. I just gave her a piece of. I'm going to send you all this this piece from Dr. Leanna Wynn. her colleague, the CDC should let Americans decide for themselves if their risk warrants getting a booster shot. I said, I don't know if that's the thing to do, but and she said, absolutely not. So, you know, my lovely ladies,
Yes.
it's just, I said, these people, they're just all over the place. They're all over the place, and it's not healthy. Literally, it's not healthy. They're literally all over the place.
We needed a comprehensive plan. I've been saying we needed a comprehensive plan. Don't say, oh, this is going to fix this, and then it don't. And then got to keep coming back to people because it's just like promising the kids some candy, and then literally you don't deliver on the candy, and at some point they stop losing faith and stop losing hope. And unfortunately, that's what they've done to people. They've worn people down. And I see that, and that's why I'm very, sensitive when people want to start talking about their lack of trust. Because as bad as we want to make this a black-white thing or a vaccinated versus unvaccinated, they dropped the ball. Because none of the education methods that we have learned in the classroom, that we have utilized even in our education system, has been reflected in regards to how they handle this pandemic.
Well, the fact that I don't see you on television telling me how I could get safety protocols. I have a friend, and she's a neighbor and a wonderful person, extremely responsible, very, very bright, educated, all of that. And we had a bit of an emergency, and she and another gentleman were standing outside of my door. I opened the door. She didn't have a mask, and I said, oh, no, you can't come in without a mask. She was startled by that. I'm like, you know what, you guys, everybody in the world, two of the most famous COVID cases has been my parents. I got to check on my mom, okay? Like every day. I can't take the risk. I mean, I'm like, how are all these people walking around unmasked? I don't get it. I don't get it.
I think part is not cleaning their hands still. I'm still seeing people like touch elevator buttons and touch their nose. And
unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to let you all go because I need these two lines, but we have, Dr. Deb, we've got to go back to the protocols. I know you're like, I feel like I'm a broken record. You're not. Because people have fallen off. They've fallen back. They have. And here's my boyfriend, Abraham, from down there in Venezuela, sending you much love, my sweet. He loves my red lipstick. I love you. Hello, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I love your red lipstick too.
Girl, me too, but I can't find it anymore. Yes, I went on Fenty because it's a red lipstick that I put on top. I put underneath something called Uncensored. It's a lip stain. Hey, I'm giving you a look. I'll share with you. And I cannot find the red lipstick. It's called Madame. Not Madame. D-A-M-N. Oh, Madame. That's what, and it's not
like
there.
Madame.
Like Madame, but it's not there. And so I'm like, and this is like the perfect complement to this. So I said, well, I guess I'll be digging in with my lip brush until I can't use it anymore. So, but that's what I use, everybody. I use a matte lipstick, and then I use a lip stain that keeps everything on. When I put on a mask, and I make sure the mask cups my face so I don't go out looking like Baby Jane. Because I hate that look. Everybody's all smeared up. I hated that last year. I couldn't take it. I even started putting, yes, I did, Dr. Knighton. I'm sorry. I would put tissue on my mouth. So girl, please, I'm not walking around with a messed up looking face. I'm not going to walk around looking jacked up. I'm wearing my heels right now. Yes, I am. I walked across my place with my heels on. Yes. I'm going to let y'all go. I'll show you. I'm not playing because mentally I am trying to stay in the right place. Look at this. Okay. Hello. I'm wearing heels today. Okay. All right. I'm not playing. I am not playing because mentally it just helped me to stay living. I'm not coming to you all in pajamas. I'm not mad at you, but I ain't doing that. So I love you all. I'm going to let you all go because I need these two lines. But we got a lot to do. Dr. Deb, is your blood pressure back down?
It's back down. I just wanted to say good morning. I was listening to the conversation.
That's
And I
CK.
want to say good morning to the ladies before you leave. And I want to say that Dr. Deb was wonderful yesterday, Santita. She appeared on my show, and we had a very spirited conversation. She was wonderful.
Well, you know she's the best.
She
I know the
really
audience
is, and I'm
loved
gonna
her.
They did. And I'm going to get Dr. Knighton on as well, because, Atlanta is a market, we try to reach as many people as we can. And I want them to be, and I always say these are the Santita Jackson Morning Stars. But I just wanted to let you know that Dr. Deborah was just great.
I knew she was. And Dr. Shanina Knighton's going to be great too. But Dr. Deb is a nut. So, bless her heart. She's just, poor Dr. Knighton, she's just like, lovely teacher, school mom. Dr. Deb is pulling out a knife, just a saber. This is crazy. I love it. Oh, but I love you all. I'm going to let you all go because I need these 2 lines. And, I have an idea. I'm going to call you, CK. I'm going to call you, Shanina. I'm going to call you, Dr. Deb. Dr. Deb, you going to be around today? You're always around, but,
I am around. I have to give a talk this afternoon, but I'm around.
I'm going to call you right after I get off the air.
Because I'm going to have a crab cake in my hand. Yes, okay, call me.
I'm going to call you right as soon as I get off the air. Shanina, I'm calling you when I get off the air. CK, I'm calling you when I get off the air. I have an idea.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, yes, I did say Stanley Davis, Baby Jane. Whatever happened to Baby Jane? Smeared up lips, not the kid. I worked not to have that. How about that? Girl, please. Like I'm gonna walk around looking crazy.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. We've been rocking and rolling already on this Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We are rocking and rolling in the Midwest and all around the country. Got my Abraham from down there in Venezuela, Vandalay from Brazil, and Linear Bob from out on the left coast, and Dave Dowling, our brother to the north up in Canada, and all of you from everywhere. Thank you for being here. And please like and share. We're going to be talking about the whippings of horsewhipped Haitians. How about that for alliteration? Horsewhipped Haitians. What did that look like? It was a bad look. The vice president of the United States said, hey, what are you doing? And even the Department of Homeland Security chief, after taking a firm stand on getting you back, you can't come here. He said, no, this is not, Mr. Mayorkas said, this is not a good look. It's a horrible look. And we're going to talk about all that went into the horsewhipping of the Haitians at the border. Because there's a lot underneath all of that. There's a lot underneath that. And so we're going to be talking about that on the Santita Jackson Show. I want to get your thoughts at 773-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Talk to me. I want to hear your voices. Or text me at that number. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you that opportunity. But I want to hear your thoughts, and I want you to meet the Morning Stars over here. Morning Stars, everybody like and share, okay? Like and share. I love you, Abraham. You're just the sweetest gentleman in the world, everybody. It is Wednesday, and in Chicago, I think the fall is coming, everybody. Certainly, we have turned that corner. It is fall time, and we're going to have a high of 63 degrees today. I hear the wind blowing. The skies are gray. We're going to have showers, perhaps storms. Minneapolis, St. Paul, however, high of 70 degrees. It will be sunny. The Dow closed down 50 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 32 points, and the S&P 500 closed down 3 points. Yesterday, well, I think we kind of had like a Santita Jackson show get together in Major League Baseball. The Twins faced off against the Cubs, and the Twins were triumphant 9-5 over the Cubs. And the White Sox will be playing the Tigers. They will be playing the Tigers today. Everybody, here's some more of these headlines. What about coronavirus? Medical experts are warning of another deadly pandemic as COVID-19 is now about to meet the flu season, everybody. The U.S. is back at a point where more than 2,000 people per day are dying of COVID-19 every day, everybody. Additionally, about 12,000 to 50,000 Americans lose their lives every year because of the flu. Going forward on the Santita Jackson Show, we're going to be talking about ways that you can boost your immune system, ways that you can stave off the flu and COVID-19 and other illnesses, everybody. The United Nations is meeting, everybody. To all of our New York listeners, God bless you if you are in Manhattan because it's hard to get around. The climate crisis was front and center at the UN General Assembly yesterday. The Chinese president recorded a rare address to the UN body promising to halt coal projects, and even as they close them, they're building more. That's going to be very interesting. The Turkish president said his country will present the Paris Climate Agreement to its parliament next month. And U.S. President Joe Biden and the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson stressed further climate action during an Oval Office meeting yesterday. Progressive Democrats have announced that they will not vote for the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill without passing the $3.5 trillion package that is aimed at enacting President Joe Biden's economic agenda, the most sweeping agenda that we have seen economically, socially, really since the Johnson years. Will they be able to hold the line? How will that work? The vote is scheduled for next week as it stands. House Speaker Pelosi can afford to lose only a handful of votes to get anything passed. So we're going to see how this is all going to work out. Let's get to Haiti, everybody. The White House has now said that images of the Border Patrol horse whipping these migrants is obviously horrific. How did we get here, everybody? Horse whipping. It looked, they were at the border and you saw these men mounted, the Border Patrol mounted on horses, and you saw them using horse whips that they used to tame their animals. They were using that to whip human beings. Horrific. It reminded you of people who were enslaved, our forebears, our ancestors, who maybe didn't pick that cotton fast enough, who didn't chop that sugarcane quickly enough. That's what it looked like to me and so many people, not just in the United States, but all around the world. I want to know what you're thinking about it, everybody. I want to know what you're thinking about it. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to know what your thoughts are. Leading this all-star panel this morning, and she can't stay with us very, very long, but we're glad that she's going to be with us for a while. We just had her yesterday. Attorney Anastasie Sanat. She is the incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association. We've got Attorney Robert Patillo, Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push, hosts his own show on WAOK in Atlanta, civil rights lawyer. We have got Attorney Mark Fancher. He's the author of the new book, The Negroes of Friends Village. I've just started it. It is fascinating, everybody. The Negroes of Friends Village. You need to go on Amazon and get it right now. And of course, he is with the National Conference of Black Lawyers. We've got Dwight McKee, our own Dr. Deese, of course, social scientist, and the outgoing president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, more than 65,000 lawyers she has been representing, and the chair of Rainbow Push, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. Let me start with you, Attorney Sanat. What are we looking at?
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, it's wonderful hearing your voice. Had to get you back. I know you said this woman, but we want to keep this issue alive. And then we saw yesterday, it really did kind of blow up because the more pictures we saw, the more video we saw, the more horrified everybody was, and the more embarrassed the administration was.
Especially the CPP officer that was caught using the S word and telling people that probably didn't even understand him that they were coming from an asshole country.
Well, okay. And then he said, you treat your women a certain way. That's why you're here. You treat your women like S. That's why
that one. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I'm glad he said it. Because it's good. Look, I want to know. My grandmama Helen said, you want to know where people are coming from. You don't want to guess.
From. Mm-hmm.
So tell me, what were we looking at?
So, what you were looking at is people that were out of control, honestly, because as I mentioned yesterday, the horse-mounted border patrol has existed for many, many years. In fact, about 1915, they weren't called that at the time, but they became called that in 1924. It lasted until 1959. Then they came back again. And as recently as 2005, I think at the time they had over 200 horses that the Bureau of Land Management was, maintaining. But from what I do understand from media reports, those individuals that were caught in the film and in the pictures are now on administrative duty.
But you know why I'm not comfortable with that? Because I think that there's a spirit coursing through Border Patrol. And I don't want to accuse everybody, because I know you got some great people everywhere, and you've got some disturbed people everywhere, too. But we're not welcoming. There's a study that shows, I didn't need the study, but I'm glad it's out here, that shows that there's racial bias that white Americans have, that they're more likely to support wars in non-white foreign countries, and we're more likely, and quite frankly, we're more likely to welcome European immigrants than people who are from these brown and black countries, and particularly the Haitians. The wet foot, dry foot, would you explain what that is?
So wet foot, dry foot generally refers to the Cuban Adjustment Act. And the Cuban Adjustment Act is a law that was created in 1966 in order to give a pathway to citizenship for Cuban nationals. So that meets certain eligibility criteria. If they were caught in the water, there's basically no foot in the door. If they were on land, then there is a foot in the door. And I do believe that Haitians should have that opportunity since we are currently in the door, so to speak. But I want to go back to the CBP Border Patrol people. And I want to say that I do know that 50% of the people that work for CBP, particularly in the Border Patrol, U.S.-Mexico Border Patrol, they're brown people. And it's very interesting to note that sometimes, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that expression, but all skin folk ain't kinfolk.
Come on.
You familiar with that?
Come on. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So in some situations, we have brown folk that don't treat black folk correctly either. And that's what we saw. That's literally what has been captured. So there are some situations that lighter complected people in the world also mistreat black people. It's like a hierarchy, a pyramid, if you will, of how treatment of, and always the black people are on the bottom of the worst treatment there is. And in this situation, that's what happened. We have whites at the top of the scale that have started the mistreatment of blacks, and then the brown people that don't want to be associated with blacks mistreat blacks, and then boom, now we have pictures of these images. And it's not as if that system of racism, right? The subconscious or conscious bias against black people has not existed for hundreds of years. We're just now
it's kind of,
We're just now capturing it.
Come on. We know if you're white, you're all right. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back. That's as old as time, and you see that disease everywhere. But there are some. Remember, on the plantations, oftentimes the overseers were black people. They get people who look like you, who have contempt for you, who've been lifted up, who feel that they're better than you because they believe the rule instead of. They want to be exceptions to the rule because they believe the rule, which is crazy in the first place, that they're all inferior. It's a horrible thing. Let me spread this around, Attorney Sanat, because, no. Before I go to everybody else, what can we do to be helpful to the Haitian American Lawyers Association and the various organizations and your efforts? I know Rainbow Push wants to be helpful, and I've got the chair of Rainbow Push, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, who can speak to this.
Well, the first thing I could tell you that we need right now is some money, because there's not enough money for us to go there and give any kind of free legal advice, because a lot of them don't have, for example, practical. There's no Zoom under the bridge, right? So even though we want to provide assistance, legal advice in order to assist them and things like that, we really just can't even get there. So if you'd like to Cash App us at HALA, HALA, Illinois, or you can PayPal or Zelle us at Hala, HALA period, Illinois @gmail.com. We can use all of the donations for our advocacy and our programming. But that is our main thing that we need right now because we're a very small group of lawyers. We have tried to connect with the Haitian lawyers in New York, New Jersey, Florida, Georgia. I was telling you the other day that our collective action is to be there for them, but it's very difficult, not only because we can't get to them in order to have the conversation, but it's also very difficult during the pandemic. So that's the first thing that I can say would be very helpful.
Well, stay right there.
Money.
Hold on. I want to connect you on the air to Attorney C.K. Hoffler, who is the immediate past national president of the National Bar Association, which is the oldest and largest black bar association in the world. She's connected to lawyers, black lawyers everywhere. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, briefly, what can the NBA, what can Rainbow Push, what can NAACP, what can we all do to help them get to the border and to get legal advice to these people?
Absolutely. The NBA, and I'm so happy we're having this conversation, the NBA has already begun the board of governors that I'm a part of as immediate past president authorized our president to go to connect, to begin a process of galvanizing lawyers and helping to train them so that they can, and we're raising money so that they can travel there to Del Rio so that they can do exactly what Ms. Bernard was talking about. So it seems to me as though we should combine forces and broaden the scope of the lawyers that we're pulling from around the country. There are many lawyers who want to do something, don't know how to do something, and may not have the resources. So I'd love to be able to connect you to because our immigration section division is leading the effort. We have a number of Haitian American lawyers as well in our organization, but just lawyers who are concerned. We also have collected food, water, clothing, all of those things too as part of the National Bar Association efforts. Relief efforts are working in conjunction with a number of organizations. We are going to pull in the Rainbow Push Coalition and seek to work with the NAACP so that we don't have a cacophony where everybody is going in separate ways accomplishing the same goal. So we'd love to work with you all. I'd love to put you in touch with President Carlos Moore and his team, and because our board has given them the authorization to move forward with a very ambitious program.
Because
I would definitely appreciate
that.
Because
we're all Haitians
in
here.
Discussion with Maurice Foster, and he's going to try to get me in touch with the president. But obviously, as immediate past president, you would be a better connection.
Well, you know what? The thing is, that's why everybody's here. Because the thing is, and I appreciate and I love the fact that the Haitian community, that you come here and you all absolutely work with one another. And I also love the fact that you also work in the broader community, the black community, just the broader American community. That's important. But at this point, all hands are on deck. And when you see something like this, that is, when you've got these people in crisis, and then the crisis is exacerbated by what we have seen, we're all not just allied, we're family. So, and I think the National Bar Association needs to be prevailed upon, quite frankly, because this is the American Bar Association, this is horrific. It's anti-American. It's inhumane. It is the worst of our human nature that we have seen on display. And there is a contempt for people that these people have that goes beyond what we saw the other day. And we need to deal with that. It's a cultural issue. Let me just bring in a couple more of these people before I hand it back over to you, Attorney Sanat, before you have to go. Just very quickly, Attorney Fancher, what are we looking at?
We're really witnessing the depth and the scope of and the impact of historical white supremacy. We have, as a species, been conditioned over the course of generations to, buy into the idea that people who are not white are, on some level, not human, and that they are subject to being to treatment that would not be fit in a civilized society. And so when we make the observation that even people of color are engaging in this, it comes as no surprise because regardless of a person's race, all of us have internalized notions of white supremacy. And it doesn't bother us so much when people are treated this way. And, even for people who believe themselves to be conscious and racially aware and all of those things, I have been impacted by this on some way. And the test for that is to be honest with yourself and close your eyes and think of the image of, these Haitian brothers and sisters being whipped, and you're disturbed by it. Then think of, teenage white suburban children being whipped in the same way, and be honest with yourself and ask yourself whether your emotional, your gut, your instinctive, your intuitive response to that is somehow qualitatively different. That's a very disturbing thing for us because we're not accustomed to seeing white people treated in that way, and it seems particularly cruel when you think about them being treated in the same way that African people and other people of color generally are treated all the time. So it's pathological. White supremacy is a sickness. It's a disease which has impacted all of us. And I think, the faster that we become honest about the impact of it, the scope of it, the depth of it, the quicker we will be to remedy it.
The last 3 minutes belong to you, Attorney Santita. I know you've got to leave us now, but how can we help you? I'm glad that you're going to stay on the line because I want to connect you and Attorney Hoffler so that you all can communicate after the show. And of course, Robert Patillo, I want to introduce you to because he also has a show. They both have radio shows on WAOK, the iconic Atlanta radio station. She's on Tuesdays at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. He's on every Sunday from 1 to 4, and you need to be on their shows, and you need to be on Keep Up Alive. I'm already grabbing you on, filling up your schedule already.
And so, thank you. I appreciate it.
It's important. It's important. 2 minutes. They belong to you.
I do agree with that. Absolutely. I agree that it needs to be in the forefront of the minds of people because this is a crisis.
So what would you have us do? 2 minutes?
Okay. I would like, first of all, like I said, please send us some money. Second of all, I think that's an excellent idea about connecting me with other lawyers throughout the country who are willing to help. Even if they don't speak the language, at least we can train them on the law. Immigration law is a very complex set of legal maneuvering, and so I would be happy to help train people in order to get them to those locations. And number three, what we need is not only assistance at the border with people on the ground, but we also need people throughout the nation, citizens, contacting their legislator. We need them to create laws that help the Black community of immigrants. So when we think about the House and we think about the Senate, we need you to contact your congressman and be our mouthpiece for us. We might not be a very large community throughout the nation, but with your voice, we can make changes. Expand TPS to include the migrants that are here. Stop the flights to Haiti. Get them formal pre-departure medical examinations. Offer the vaccinations to them. Create laws that will help them stay here and create laws that will give them a pathway to citizenship. So there's a number of things that we could do, but those are the three things that I can think of right now that would be very helpful to us.
Amen. And Norman, you don't need money to do this. If you can't give money, you can make a phone call. You can have your friends make phone calls.
That's correct.
That's what you need to do. Everybody can contribute. Everybody. Dr. King said, everybody is not going to be famous, but everybody can be great because everybody can serve. Indeed, that is what you're supposed to do. So please call Washington, D.C., 202-224-3121. That's Congress. Call the people in the upper and lower houses and let them know that you want the Haitians to be given asylum, period. That is what they're looking for. If we are going to give asylum, give it to others, and we should, give it to the Haitians. Our generosity should not end with Haitians. It should stay right there. Stay right there for more of the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you, everybody. Stay right here. I'm going to connect you and Attorney Hoffler by text. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay.
Okay? Yeah, because we're on Facebook Live. I'm not. That's why I'm not
Absolutely.
giving.
And I do want to let you. I want to let that the Haitian Bridge Alliance is partnering with the National Bar Association as well. And so I think that
we are working with them as well as the National Association of Elected Haitian Officials, NAON.
NAON, yes, absolutely. Those are the entities. And I've spoken to Dr. Alex DeSuma as well. So I think,
wonderful.
I think that there is a lot that can be done collaboratively, and we can pool the resources nationally because there's so many people that want to help, don't know how to help. I know that there's a delegation, very small delegation for the NBA, including our president traveling there tomorrow. So, and I think, and I sent, he's 1 hour behind, so it's 7:20 his time. I should hear from him. I sent a text to our president, and I'm sure I'll hear back from him. And so I will connect you all directly. Maurice Foster is already.
Well, I appreciate that.
But I just will call the president, put you on, and then y'all do what you do.
I would appreciate that. That would be excellent. That would be excellent. In fact, I really appreciate you, Ms. Jackson, for connecting us, because I think it is necessary that Black lawyers have an opportunity to help the Black immigrants, because there are so many opportunities that we have to help the Black community. This is an excellent opportunity for us to expand our legal knowledge as well as to help each other. So this is a great connection, and I appreciate it.
Well, also, welcome to America.
Right.
Yeah. How about that piece? Yeah, for everybody, because I mean, really, it was painful to see many of our African brothers and sisters, when they heard about the S-hole nations. Oh my gosh, I'm an immigrant. We've been a model immigrant community. Blah, blah, blah. I was like, I hear you, but welcome to America, kids. That is how people view you. How do you think colonialism happened? I'm like, oh, what? Okay, but I'll leave that alone.
Patrols are definitely something that that brought to my mind, and I'm thinking, how are you re-traumatizing the world with those images? United States, just stop.
Or waking them up.
It's disturbing.
These kids, people, we need to know what our history is. See, if you remove the history, remove not the ancient landmarks which thy fathers and mothers have set. It's in the Bible. When you remove the history, you repeat it. You need reminders. That this is where we've been, that we can get right back here, and this is where we are. Horsewhipped at the border, and these are intelligence agents. They know they were being recorded. They were letting folks know how they handled these Negroes at the border. Now,
but after George Floyd, I feel like some people are really just ignorant. And not everybody in law enforcement is ignorant, but some of these people are just ignorant. How could you not know that you might be held accountable, particularly after George Floyd?
They don't care.
9 minutes, 29 seconds. You are being recorded.
They don't care.
You know that you are, and if something should occur, you're going to go to jail at this point.
No,
because they have a long time just to even.
Derek Chauvin is an exception. He's not the rule. Folks don't go to jail.
Oh, well.
Come on now.
I think that before Derek Chauvin, people didn't go to jail. I feel like there's more people in the community willing to indict these police officers that are ignorant now.
Because the pressure's there.
There are more people that are more willing to put these bad apples out.
Because the pressure's there. If the pressure eases up, that will end.
And that's why I continue to thank you for allowing the Haitian crisis to remain forefront in the minds of your listeners. Of
course.
Because I think it's important that people know we are out here. We are,
I'm coming
struggling to help each other out in the African diaspora, and this is one way.
Well, we're all one. How about that? Sending you much love.
Can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Whoa, what a morning already on the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, 773-763 WCPT, 773-763-9278. We're talking about the Haitians who were horsewhipped at the border, horrifying the vice president, the Biden administration, and decent people everywhere. This is not just a black-white issue, although that would be enough. This is a human rights issue, everybody. This is about how you treat people. Now, let's grow up in our politics. We've racialized our politics. We've done that for far too long. And then just our classism, all of it. You don't treat people this way. You need to stop embracing some immigrants and making other people live in their waste. That's what's happening down there. It's a horrible thing. We're treating people horribly. And they're saying, this is not the country I recognize. Well, sugar, you need to welcome to America, darling, because this is how it works here. Now, we've been working to change things. But don't think Dr. King just sprouted up out of the ground. He was created by some horrific circumstances. Thank you, Attorney Sanat, for being with us, of course, from the Haitian American Lawyers Association. She is their incoming president. And I've connected you by text, Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Attorney Sanat. Attorney Sanat had to get to work, but we're going to continue to keep this issue alive here on the Santita Jackson Show. Joining you, Attorney Hoffler, Attorney Mark Fancher, the author of great civil libertarian, and of course from the National Conference of Black Lawyers. This book, The Negroes of Friends Village, I just started it. I am so excited. He is a novelist as well. I love it. And then, of course, Attorney Robert Patillo, the director of the Rainbow Push Atlanta office. He's the Southeastern Regional Director for Rainbow Push. And Dwight McKee, noted social scientist. Haven't heard from Attorney Patillo and Dwight McKee. Let me start with you, Attorney Patillo. What do you make of what we've seen with the horsewhipping of the Haitians at the border?
Well, it's interesting because the horses weren't the issue. The cameras were. These bounty hunters, these border patrol agents didn't look like this is the first time they've ever done this. They in no way, shape, or form looked like they were caught off guard or surprised. The issue was this was on camera for the world to see this time. They're not simply done in the darkness. We have to understand that this is part of U.S. policy towards Haiti. This has been the policy of the United States towards Haiti for over 200 years. It is the goal of the European powers in the Western world to destroy Haiti at all, regardless of what it costs and what it takes, because they have to send a message to the rest of the colonized world that if you rebel against us, if you stand up and violently throw us out of your country, we may not shoot you with bullets and guns, but we will make sure you suffer from here on out. And we cannot allow the symptoms to let us ignore the sickness that exists. This current migrant crisis is a symptom. The sickness is the $100 billion of reparations that Haiti had to pay to France in the 19th century. They give that money back, then you don't have these refugee crises. The sickness is the 20 years of U.S. occupation from 1919 to the 1930s in Haiti. The sickness is President Clinton occupying Haiti. The sickness is President Bush kidnapping the president of Haiti, dropping him off in Africa, and putting his own puppet government in place there. And this was in the early 2000s. The sickness is the fact that when the president of Haiti was assassinated several months ago, the U.S. DEA was there on the ground investigating at the time. And many people on the ground there still think that the U.S. was complicit in that assassination taking place. It's interesting there was the U.S. DEA on the ground and not the FBI or in other intelligence organizations. So when we look at this, we have to look at this holistically as a policy position in the United States. This was not an accident. The accident was that somebody caught it on camera and it got distributed throughout the world. And let's stop saying that this is not who America is. This is exactly who America is. Let's not say that this was a horrible mistake. It was not a mistake. Those people looked like they were very well trained in what they were doing. They were whipping those, what now the excuse is those weren't whips, they were reins. They were whipping wherever that was around pretty good, and like they knew exactly what they were doing and rounding up those Haitians and getting them out of the country almost instantly. So we have to look at this policy-wise and go to our government and ask them to stop what they have been doing to Haiti for the last 2 centuries. Accept them come into the Western world, take the whoopings. You lost one war 200 years ago, and you hated this island ever since. Let's work on changing the Jewish policy positions and allow them to prosper like any other nation within the hegemonic sphere of influence of the United States of America. And once we can do that, then we can fix these sickness instead of simply treating the symptoms.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, what you were looking at was Europeans beating the stolen people of the stolen land. I totally agree with Robert. Ever since Toussaint beat Napoleon and ran him out of Haiti, there's been a vendetta against the Haitian people. And there is a real vicious reaction to Haiti from Europeans because it personifies to the world that Black people can beat white people at the art of war. So they've always used Haitian as an example of who we should never try to be. The defiance, the arrogance, the resourcefulness of Haiti has always been a shining example to the rest of the Black world as who we can and ought to be. But it's always been for the white world a thorn in their side. Because if we become that, it's going to be at the expense of the rest of the European world, as it was at the expense of France when Toussaint kicked them out of Haiti. Robert is right. They've been paying reparations for the last 150 years back to the French because the French were embarrassed and insulted that they decided not to become their slaves. And they made them pay a price for that. In this situation, I'd really like to hear from a couple of people. One would be Mayor Lightfoot. And we should have some policy for Chicago as a sanctuary city that we have for the Hispanics and particularly the Mexicans, because Chicago was found by the Haitians. And we, among all other cities, should become a sanctuary city for Haiti. Mm-hmm. I'd also like to hear from the Clintons, who, Robert, has all the money that they took in that foundation that was supposed to go to Haiti that nobody ever saw. And they've been strangely quiet during all these earthquakes and all this disaster with that $100 million they've been, at least $100 million that they've been sitting on for 15 years that never got to Haiti and has gone to, people say, questionable places. They should be, we need money for this situation. They should be the first ones that put that money into play.
Everybody, what do you think? What do you think about what we've seen? How do we remedy this? 773-763-9278, 773-763 WCPT. Before I go back to the panel, is Jim still there?
Yes.
Jim, what's on your mind?
Good morning. We have an incoherent immigration policy we've had for years. The problem is they're afraid how the immigrants going to vote. And if they think they're going to vote Republican, I'm sure the Republicans would get to the table right away and make a coherent immigration policy, because this is modern world. They can do a lot of like online and with the smartphone. They don't have to have people at the border. The point is they're worried about the way they're going to vote. They stripped out it's affecting all of us. They stripped out a million people headed for citizenship. They're going to take that out of the bill because the Republicans wouldn't stand for it, because they know that poor people usually vote Democratic. So as long as they have that political road cross where they can't get together, we have to get together eventually, because you're going to have water shortages. You're going to have people on the move because of climate change. We're going to have to get down to a coherent immigration situation. We have all the modern tools to do it. We can do it online. We can do it at telephone. You don't need to beat people up at the border. Anyway, thanks a million, and good morning to everybody.
Blessings to you, and thank you so much for that. I mean, Robert, do you agree with Jim? Do you think it's because this is a partisan issue? Is it a cultural issue? Is it all of the above? Because, many immigrants, including black immigrants, they come to the United States and they might come poor, but they're not poor for long typically. And the wealthier people become, the more conservative their politics tend to become. So you tell me, what are your thoughts?
Well, 2 points on that. This is a trans-political issue. And my mom's from Haiti, so let me explain to people why you see immigrants who come to America become so successful. It's because it's hard to get here. Mm-hmm. That's the entire to be the answer. But you need a certain level of intelligence, of determination, of gall, of moxie, of risk-taking. All the things that make you successful at business is what it takes for you to get from Haiti to America and stay here in the first place. You can't be some lazy, one of my cousins laying around waiting for somebody to send them a check. They still exist. They're just still back in Port-au-Prince. They never make it over here in the first place. So it's not that immigrants are magical or something. It's just percentage-wise, the best and brightest are working their way over here, and they're taking that best and brightestness and putting that into business, putting that into education, putting that into raising and creating their family. And if you took the same thing in the American expat community, for example, you will probably see similar percentages. But the reason I don't think that there's a political issue is that it's been the policy of the United States administration or the United States government since the administration of Thomas Jefferson. We've always acted like this towards Haiti. This is some deep down foundational Western European democracy hatred that they have. Because imagine what would happen if the entirety of the colonized world decided to act like Haiti instead of acting like Martin Luther King. Let's say instead of them thinking in South Africa that they were going to protest and bring public awareness and sing songs and hymns and march for their rights, let's say instead everybody just got machetes and started chopping up all the white people. That's not what Western democracies want to see happening. That's not the message they want to see. So they have to show that model as being a long-term failure. And they do this by using Haiti as that example. So when we talk about those hundreds of billions of dollars of reparations of owed, when we talk about the U.S. occupation of the island on multiple occasions, when we talk about the interference in local politics and local leadership and the refusal to allow them to make the actual hegemonic decisions for their own people, this is why the U.S. policy is what it is. So I think you can look at the policy that Bill Clinton had towards Haiti. You can look at the policy that George W. Bush had towards Haiti. It was the exact same policy. Mm-hmm. You can look at the statement of Biden from 1994 where he said if Haiti sunk into the ocean, it would not change U.S. strategic objectives in the region. You can see that Haiti has a very clear place in American policy, which is being the enemy of American policy, and then they use their press, they use their media to say, oh God, those poor, sorry Haitian people, I wish they could just get their stuff together. I know y'all stole hundreds of millions of dollars. Just get the money back and leave them alone and see how that looks. They don't need your sympathy, they don't need your help. They need their money back, their resources back for you to leave them the hell alone.
Attorney Mark Fancher, what's the remedy?
Well, there are a lot of practical things that can be done in the short term that I think have been discussed this morning. But there's some fundamental kinds of things that remain as challenges, and Brother Patillo mentioned several of them. One is just this general imperialist attitude toward Haiti and the treatment of it. I mean, we can't be surprised that they would treat immigrants that way. When you look at how they even treated the president of Haiti some years ago, about 17, 18 years ago.
Aristide.
Jean-Bertrand Aristide, was approached in his home by U.S. military forces and at gunpoint forced to leave the country. Mm-hmm. A duly elected, democratically elected president of a country, is treated like he's dirt. So we can't be at all surprised. So we're dealing with just the general phenomenon of imperialism. And, on the level of just masses of people globally, we have to recognize that this is not a question of what the U.S. government should be made to do. This is a question of what imperialism globally should be made to do, because they work hand in glove. At the same time that Aristide was kidnapped, the U.S. Congress was saying things like they didn't want to, call French fries anymore because France wouldn't participate in the invasion of Iraq. But this same group of, fire-breathing Congress people who, hated France worked, with no problem with France in kidnapping Jean-Bertrand Aristide. So this is a global thing, and we need to understand that our connections, our alliances with struggling people around the world are vitally important to any effort or any hope that we have of overcoming these types of forces. It does require a revolutionary approach, a global revolutionary approach by people themselves, not something that comes through the use of the machinery of government that has been set up by the very forces which are responsible for this type of phenomenon.
Attorney C.K. Hoffler, you'll be returning on your regular spot on Wednesdays, legal Q&A with C.K. But today, I just said, we have got to jump into this. And not to mention the fact that you've spent a lot of time in these countries, out of the country, and you've been looking at fair elections. And so you've had to interact not only with these emerging and powerful countries in the so-called global South, Black and brown countries, but you've also, and you've had to work with our government. I mean, you've had to do a lot of things. Where do we go from here? I mean, what can we do? I mean, can we get these Haitians processed into the United States once they're processed here? Where do they go? Do we open up these empty or these bases? I mean, because we put Afghan refugees, they're on America's military bases. Before we say that we have no place to put them, I mean, is there something that we can do?
Absolutely. Santita, and I have to disclose, before President Aristide became President Aristide, our law firm represented President Aristide. So the Haitian addressing issues of concern to Haiti, for me, that's something that I've dealt with historically on so many levels. And part of my honors thesis in college was on Haiti. So I do really, really feel very strongly about some of these things. There are a lot of things we can do. One, we did hear from the president of the Haitian American Attorneys Association, coalition of lawyers raising money and going down and helping those refugees who are still there. Now, what we have to understand is by the plane loads, they're being sent back. Mm-hmm. If they're going to be sent back, I love a suggestion that Dr. Deborah Holden came up with, which is all of these vaccinations and medical supplies that we have, COVID vaccines that we have, as opposed to giving them $100 and COVID tests, all these COVID vaccines that are sending them back to Haiti. How about a coordinated effort for those that are already in transit, have already gone there, a coordinated effort to get those vaccines there? Because we know, given the environmental disaster, not to mention the pre-existing human and civil issues that were going on in Haiti with the murder of their leader, they need COVID vaccinations. Being here under those circumstances, under a bridge in Texas, has compounded the healthcare issue. So there's a healthcare component. Thirdly, it really is illegal. What the legal framework that the Biden administration is using, that the Trump administration used, contravenes existing U.S. law. So we do have a legal framework that has to be followed, respecting the rule of law, so that they can stay here, so that they can be treated as other people seeking asylum at this particular time. Calling your senators, calling on your leaders, the people that you have elected to represent you and represent things that are important to you. 202-224-3121. Don't just call them, and press upon them to come up with a more humane and civilized approach to these Haitian refugees. Express your discontent. That call means a lot, just like on other issues when it comes to voting rights, human rights, civil rights. This is a human rights and civil rights crisis. Your local, there in most major cities, there's a very significant Haitian American presence. and there are organizations that are coordinating relief efforts, including churches. Sometimes people don't have money to give, and we understand that we're operating in COVID and it's a difficult time, but you may have time to help coordinate supplies that are being sent to Haiti as Haiti now is confronting a devastating situation. So there's so much, Santita, that can be done. Everybody can play a role. If you can lend your voice and can make a call, you can help.
Absolutely. Dwight McKee, your thoughts in a couple of minutes. Where do we go from here?
How about carving out some of the Louisiana purchase territory for the Haitians, since they are the ones who are responsible for the United States being able to buy that from France directly? It was them beating Napoleon that forced Napoleon to sell that territory to America. So in many ways, all of the Western territory past the Mississippi has been a product of the Haitian Revolution. And so why not we carve an area out as we're doing for the Afghanistan, the Afghans, almost every immigrant group that came from Europe who needed a place to stay. Why don't we carve out a place for them that they can become viable citizens and can get past the oppression of France that has been on their necks for the last 200 years, and also can get past the devastation of the earthquakes and assassinations down there and the hurricanes. And again, Clinton should be held responsible for all of the money that was set aside that was supposed to go for Haitian relief, that his foundation became the fiduciary for, that the Haitians never saw. That money is in a bank somewhere, and they should have access to that money.
Amen to that. Well, let me ask you this, Robert. You connected me to a story very quickly that I just said, these people are not just going to sit and take this. The Haitians took over. They overtook a bus. They seized control of a bus. Robert Patillo?
Yeah, that's absolutely. And I think, if you have any understanding of I think if you have any understanding of Haitian history, that was very predictable. So what happened was one of these border patrol buses that were taking many of the migrants to the detention facility to then be processed and deported. The Haitian migrants just overwhelmed the drivers, took command of the bus, and then escaped. And I think what it demonstrates is the desperation of this situation, because I have some family members who had to go from Haiti, then live in Venezuela for 4 years. And these people can just simply, cross the border, as many of the people in migrant caravans have. Many of them have went from Haiti to living in other islands in the Caribbean, to living in South America for 4 years, to living in Central America, and then working their way up to the U.S. Because when you look at the trail of destruction that U.S. foreign policy and corporate policy over the last century has wrought in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean, what has made America so rich is we've just basically absorbed all the resources and destabilized all the government and the rest of the hemisphere. So these people are coming to America because that's where their resources are that we have taken from them. That's where the money is that we have taken from them. And these people are not in a condition where they can simply turn back around and go back home. They have nothing to go home to. So the option of prison in America or going back to nothing, which they left back home, they will choose prison in America. So we're setting ourselves up for a very desperate situation that could escalate quickly unless the United States turns their policy positions around when it comes to being the hegemonic leader of this hemisphere. You can go back to Washington's farewell address saying the Europeans should not be involved in the goings-ons of anything within this industry. You can look at the Monroe Doctrine, saying that we are in charge of everything within our backyard. You can look at the Cold War with Kennedy and Nixon, trying to make sure you never have Russian interference within the industry. Look at the battles we're having with China right now, saying that America is in charge of all this stuff over here, where if you're going to be in charge, then you have to be in charge, and that means taking care of these issues and not simply using the rest of the hemisphere as a resource farm to be soaked into your nation. And this is why we have to have a policy in place that deals with these matters in a humanitarian way, because otherwise you set yourselves up for more foreign interference. And China starts looking a lot more reasonable to talk to. The Middle Eastern nations are more reasonable to talk to when America's rounding people up on horseback and then going to United Nations literally the very next day to lecture other countries about human rights.
Because they've been on the other side of this. You know, Dr. King said one day these nations that we ignore would rise up and rival us, if not overtake us. We have to know where our wealth came from. And you know what? We just have to make a decision to do right, everybody. So we're going to continue to lift up the Haitians every day and everybody who's living under the boot of oppression. They have a home here on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you, everybody. See you tomorrow. My lovely people, do you want to say anything very quickly? I got to run into a Zoom meeting. Ain't that nothing? CK, I'm going to call you before because I'm going to be late to the meeting.
All right. And no worries. And I have to run right now, but great show. And I think this is going to be an ongoing issue.
It is.
But there is a legal framework. If the administration followed the rule of law, there would be. We don't have to really reinvent the laws for this. I think a lot of people don't realize that, but. There's a lot that people can do, and I'm glad that people are coalescing and wanting to do something. It's dangerous going to Del Rio there. One, you may not have access, and two, COVID. Just think of the circumstances when they've been under a bridge during COVID for so long, and also coming over the conditions that they came over to the U.S. So I think there are very, very significant health concerns.
Well, and that's why, we have to have a conversation. Because, conversation about it, get the best advice, talk to Dr. McDougall from the National Medical Association, all these people. We can help them as chair of Rainbow Push. You can help them because that's what we do. Bring all of these different people together so that we can be helpful. I love you, everybody. Dwight McKee, excuse me, I didn't get a chance to promote your book one more time. The Negroes of Friends Village, everybody, by Mark Fancher. As soon as I finish reading it, I'm going to bring you on for about 15, 20 minutes so we can talk about it, Attorney Fancher, because this is so exciting. I love it. Plus, I love the cover. It's fabulous. Dwight McKee, Robert Patillo, I love you all. Thank you for being with us today. We're going to continue to keep this issue out front, everybody, because we not only need to do better, we need to do right. It's no longer the time to do better. We don't have time for that. We need to do right. Love you, everybody. God bless you. Thank you, Paul. Love you all.